Rome was burning. Not a small fire, not the kind that fades before sunrise. This was different. The flames moved through the city like an army. Roofs collapsed into crowded streets. Children disappeared inside smoke so thick their mothers could not even see their faces. Men carried buckets that turned to steam before reaching the fire. And somewhere above the chaos, above the screaming, above the dying city, its emperor was watching. Some said he was singing. Some said he stood in royal robes, staring into the flames as if he were admiring a painting. But the most terrifying part of Nero's story is not whether he burned Rome. It is this: by the end of his life, Nero no longer knew the difference between reality and theater. And when a man like that gains absolute power, an empire begins to die. Ancient Rome, the heart of the world, a city of marble temples, blood-stained arenas, crowded markets, and endless ambition. At night, torchlight reflected across golden statues. During the day, senators argued while slaves carried wine through enormous villas. More than 1 million people lived there, and every one of them knew the same truth. Rome did not belong to the people. It belonged to the emperor. In the year 54 AD, that emperor became Nero. He was only 16. Young, elegant, soft-spoken. The people celebrated in the streets when he took the throne. After years of cruel rulers and political corruption, Nero seemed different, hopeful, almost gentle. Even wise men believed Rome had finally found peace. And for a short time. They were right. Taxes were lowered, executions slowed, public games returned. Artists and poets filled the palace halls again. The people adored him. But power is a strange thing. It does not destroy a man immediately. First, it gives him everything he desires, and only later does it reveal the hunger hiding inside him. Nero did not dream of becoming a great conqueror. He did not care much for military glory. He wanted something far more dangerous. Admiration, attention, worship. He believed he was not merely an emperor, but a genius. A divine artist sent to earth. He spent hours singing before crowds, writing poetry, performing music, and everyone was forced to listen. Senators, generals, nobles, even old men too weak to stand were expected to remain through his performances. No one dared criticize him, because Nero's ego was delicate, and fragile egos are often the cruelest. The first person to discover this was his own mother. Agrippina, one of the most powerful women Rome had ever seen. Cold, brilliant, patient, she had manipulated emperors, destroyed rivals, and built Nero's path to power with her own hands. Without her, Nero would have remained forgotten. But now the boy she created sat on the throne of the world, and slowly, he began to hate her. Agrippina still advised him, still corrected him, still spoke to him like a child. To Nero, that felt unbearable, because deep inside him, behind the performances and confidence, was insecurity, the terrible insecurity of a man who needs constant praise to survive. And anyone who threatened that illusion had to go. At first, Nero tried poison, but Agrippina survived. Then he designed a special boat, a beautiful ship built to collapse in the middle of the sea. The plan was simple. His mother would drown quietly. No witnesses, no scandal. But fate humiliated him again. The boat broke apart, and Agrippina survived the wreck. Imagine that moment. A woman swimming through freezing black water beneath the moonlight, realizing her own son had tried to murder her. She returned home trembling, wet, exhausted, terrified. But Nero had already crossed the line in his mind. There was no turning back now. so he sent soldiers to finish it. When they entered her chamber, Agrippina understood immediately. She did not beg, did not scream. Instead, she pointed toward her womb and said, "Strike here," the place that gave him life. Moments later, she was dead, and that night, something inside Nero broke forever. After killing his mother, Nero stopped pretending to be human. Rome began changing around him. Quietly at first, then all at once. People disappeared during the night. Advisors were executed over suspicion alone. The palace became poisoned with fear. No one knew who would survive tomorrow. Not even Nero's own wife. Octavia, she was gentle, respected, loved by the people of Rome, and that alone made her dangerous. Because tyrants can survive hatred, but they cannot survive comparison. Nero accused her of betrayal. No evidence, no mercy. She was exiled from the city, then later, executed. When ordinary Romans heard the news, many openly cried in the streets, and Nero saw that. He saw Rome mourning someone else, loving someone else, and from that moment, his paranoia deepened. Then came the fire, the moment that would stain Nero's name for the next 2,000 years. It began on a hot summer night in 64 AD, near the Circus Maximus. At first, people thought it was manageable. Fires were common in Rome, but within minutes, the wind changed. The flames spread through tightly packed wooden homes faster than anyone could react. Entire neighborhoods ignited at once. People woke choking on smoke. Families became separated in the panic. Some were crushed beneath collapsing buildings before they even reached the streets. Others ran toward the river, only to find thousands already trapped there. The city became chaos, pure chaos. For 6 days, Rome burned. The smell of smoke and death filled the air so heavily people could taste it on their tongues. Animals screamed inside burning stables. Temples collapsed in showers of sparks. Bodies lined the roads, and every night, the sky glowed red, as if the empire itself had opened its veins. Then the rumors began. Rumors that spread faster than the fire itself. People whispered that imperial guards had blocked citizens from stopping the flames. Others claimed mysterious men were setting new fires deliberately. And then came the darkest rumor of all, that Nero himself wanted Rome destroyed, that he dreamed of rebuilding the city in his own image, a monument to his greatness, a stage worthy of a god. Was it true? Historians still argue about it today. But here is what matters most. The people believed it. And once people begin fearing their ruler more than death itself, the empire starts collapsing from the inside. Nero understood the danger immediately. Rome needed someone to blame, and he would never allow that blame to land on him. So he found a target, the Christians. At the time, they were small in number, strange to Roman society, easy to isolate, easy to sacrifice. Nero accused them of starting the fire, and suddenly, the rage of Rome had a direction. What followed was horrifying even by Roman standards. Christians were dragged through the streets, tortured publicly, executed in arenas while crowds watched. Some were sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs. Others were crucified, and some were burned alive at night to illuminate Nero's gardens during royal banquets. Imagine that image. Music echoing through palace gardens, wine pouring into golden cups, nobles laughing beneath the night sky, while human beings burned like torches beside them. That was Nero's Rome, a place where suffering became decoration, where cruelty became entertainment, and where the emperor himself seemed completely detached from human pain. Then came his greatest insult to the people, the Golden House, the Domus Aurea, a massive palace built directly over the ashes of burned neighborhoods, artificial lakes, marble halls, gold-covered ceilings, gardens large enough to resemble kingdoms, while ordinary Romans searched through rubble for the remains of their children. Nero built paradise for himself. And finally, the fear began turning into hatred. The Senate turned against him. Generals lost loyalty. Rebellions spread through distant provinces. The empire was slipping from his hands. And the strange thing about men who spend their entire lives pretending to be gods is that reality destroys them very quickly. By the year 68 AD, Nero stood completely alone. Even his bodyguards abandoned him. The Senate officially declared him an enemy of Rome, the emperor of the world, now hunted like an animal. That night, Nero fled the city in darkness. No cheering crowds followed him. No loyal armies protected him. Rome had finally grown tired of its emperor. He escaped to a small villa outside the city with only a few servants remaining. And there, for the first time in his life, Nero met silence, no applause, no music, no admiration, only fear, a real fear. He paced through the rooms trembling, muttering to himself, asking what would happen to his body after death. Outside, horsemen moved closer through the darkness. Time was running out. Nero knew the soldiers would soon arrive. And suddenly, the man who had ordered countless executions could not face his own. He picked up a dagger. His hands shook violently. Again and again he tried. Again and again, fear stopped him, the mighty emperor of Rome, too terrified to die. Finally, one of his servants helped force the blade into his throat. Blood spilled across the floor. And as Nero faded away, he whispered his final words, not about Rome, not about the people he destroyed, not about regret, even at the end. Nero remained trapped inside himself. He said, "What an artist dies in me." And just like that, the emperor was gone, 21 years old, ruler of the greatest empire on earth, reduced to a frightened man bleeding alone in a borrowed house. Rome survived him. Empires usually do survive men like Nero. But his story endured for another reason. Because Nero represents something timeless, something frighteningly human, the danger of a man who confuses attention with love, performance with greatness, power with divinity. And perhaps that is why the story still feels so disturbing today. Because Nero was not born a monster. He became one slowly, through vanity, isolation, fear, and the endless hunger to be admired, until eventually, he no longer saw people as human beings, only as an audience. And history has shown again and again that when rulers begin treating the world like a stage, sooner or later, everything burns.